There's a moment you know well. It lives somewhere between breath and silence. The pause before you speak your truth, the flicker of doubt before you send a message. Make a decision, or let your face show what you really feel. Your body remembers before your mind does. It remembers the times when expression had consequences, when honesty carried a price. So you edit yourself in real time, 1,000 tiny self-corrections made in the name of peace. You've spent years becoming fluent in emotional translation, learning how to say what others want to hear, how to smile when you're uneasy, how to read the air before reading your own needs. And somewhere along the way, you stopped noticing that you were doing it. You became efficient at self-containment, predictable, safe, invisible. That's the tragedy of control. It masquerades as love, protection, or order. It tells you, I know what's best for you. It promises stability. But in exchange, it quietly asks for your autonomy. Perhaps it began with a parent whose affection was tied to obedience, or a household where silence kept the peace. Maybe it was a partner who wrapped dominance in tenderness, who praised your maturity when you gave in, who called your boundaries coldness. You learned that safety came from compliance, and compliance became identity. But here's the paradox. The very mechanism that once protected you from harm now prevents you from living. You built walls to keep chaos out, only to find they kept you in. Now, long after the controllers have left your life, their voices still linger like ghosts in the corridors of your mind. You second-guess your instincts. You shrink before you speak. You ask permission to exist. You're not being kept small anymore. You're keeping yourself small. 2. Definition and psychological authority. Deep dive. To dissect control, we must see it as more than dominance. It's an ecosystem of subtle psychological maneuvers that target your sense of agency. Control operates through emotional conditioning. It convinces you that your value is tied to your predictability. It's not always loud or abusive. Often, it's soft, persuasive, wrapped in the language of "I just worry about you." In developmental psychology, this creates what's known as a collapsed locus of control. A child with an internal locus believes, my actions shape my outcomes. A child under chronic control learns an external locus. Others decide my fate. When that belief calcifies, the adult becomes hesitant, risk-averse, and deeply self-doubting, not because they lack ability, but because they've been trained to distrust their own power. Then comes learned helplessness, a concept discovered by Martin Seligman in the 1960s, when people experience repeated situations where effort doesn't change results. Criticism no matter what, punishment regardless of intent, they stop trying to assert autonomy. Their nervous system rewires around passivity. Alongside, it grows the fawn response, identified by Pete Walker. This is trauma's quietest child, the one who survives, not by fighting or fleeing, but by pleasing. Fawning looks like empathy, but it's anxiety disguised as care. It's the art of emotional shape-shifting, changing tone, opinion, and even personality to soothe the threat of disapproval. And deeper still, there's internalized control, what sociologists call introjected authority. You no longer need the controlling figure present. Their rules have become your mental wallpaper. You police yourself before anyone else can. Neuroscience shows that chronic emotional control affects the body's hardware. The amygdala, our fear center, becomes hypersensitive, constantly scanning for cues of rejection or conflict. The prefrontal cortex, which governs self-expression and decision-making, is inhibited by cortisol floods. The result, your nervous system treats autonomy as a threat signal. This is why you freeze when asked to choose, why expressing anger feels like danger, Why saying no feels physically painful. Your body has learned a terrible equation. Control equals safety. Freedom equals risk. And even after escaping controlling environments, that math still runs silently in the background of your life. 3. The emotional cost and philosophical weight. The core of the pain. The cost of being controlled is not just emotional fatigue. It's existential diminishment. Every time you swallow your truth, you perform a small funeral for a piece of your identity. You bury the impulse to dance freely, to speak without caution, to love without fear of reprisal. And over years, these micro-funerals accumulate into an invisible grief. The grief of a life unlived. Carl Jung warned that neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. Control prevents legitimate suffering, the pain of growth, the ache of independence, and replaces it with chronic unease. You don't feel dramatic highs or lows anymore. You live in a narrow corridor of acceptable feeling. In philosophy, control's cost mirrors the story of Prometheus, the titan who stole fire for humanity and was punished by eternal restraint. When you internalize control, you become both Prometheus and the chain. You punish yourself for your own vitality. You see it in small things. How you flinch when praised, because attention once meant scrutiny. How you downplay your achievements, because pride once provoked correction. How you hesitate to dream, because hope once invited disappointment. The deepest fear isn't failure, it's visibility. Because visibility feels like exposure, and exposure used to lead to pain. Many controlled children grow into adults who confuse peace with numbness. They say they don't like drama, but what they really mean is I can't handle volatility because it reactivates my nervous system. They crave harmony, even at the cost of authenticity. Existentially, this is the sacrifice of authenticity for belonging. The oldest human trade-off. We are wired to need connection. To a child, rejection is death. So you surrender truth for attachment. And when done repeatedly, you forget there was ever a difference. The philosopher Erich Fromm called this escape from freedom. Freedom terrifies those who have only known order through obedience. It demands self-trust, risk, and responsibility. All things control stripped away. And yet, some quiet part of you still remembers what wholeness feels like. It flickers in moments of solitude, in art, in laughter, in rebellion. That's your unbroken self, the part still reaching for the sky, despite being told to stay small. 4. Adult manifestation and the unlearning extensive examples. The legacy of control doesn't vanish when you grow up. It simply changes costumes. You might recognize yourself in one or several of these patterns. You replay interactions on loop, decoding tone, replaying gestures, searching for hidden criticism. Your mind is a hyperactive threat scanner. It calls itself thoughtful, but really, it's trying to prevent emotional ambush. The peacekeeper. You dread conflict like physical pain. You'd rather absorb discomfort than risk someone's anger. You apologize reflexively, even when you've done nothing wrong. The perfectionist. Mistakes once invited ridicule or rejection. So now you chase flawlessness as self-protection. You equate worth with performance, peace with control. The invisible contributor. At work, you over-deliver quietly. Recognition feels unsafe. Spotlight equals vulnerability. You prefer being reliable over seen. The self-silencer. In relationships, you edit your needs. You convince yourself that independence means never asking. You praise yourself for being low maintenance, when really, you've normalized neglect. The controller turned controller. What was done to you becomes what you do to others. You manage loved ones, emotions, overplan everything, anticipate disasters that never come. It isn't dominance. It's disguised hyper. Each of these behaviors isn't who you are. It's how you survived. But healing begins the moment you witness them without judgment. When you say, this is not a flaw, it's a defense. That awareness cracks the old conditioning, because control thrives in the unconscious. The moment it's named, it loses its invisibility cloak. Unlearning control means tolerating uncertainty again. Letting silence hang after you speak an uncomfortable truth. Allowing someone to be disappointed and realizing you didn't die. Letting chaos re-enter life, not as a threat, but as proof that you're alive. A useful lens here is attachment theory. Those raised under control often develop anxious or avoidant attachments. Anxious types cling, trying to manage others' emotions to preserve security. Avoidant types withdraw, controlling distance to avoid vulnerability. Both are attempts to regulate the unbearable unpredictability of connection. The practice of secure attachment begins when you stop outsourcing emotional regulation. You learn to hold your own anxiety without making it someone else's responsibility. You stop demanding that the world stay perfectly calm for you to feel safe. The practice of secure attachment begins when you stop outsourcing emotional regulation. You learn to hold your own anxiety without making it someone else's responsibility. You stop demanding that the world stay perfectly calm for you to feel safe. And this is where unlearning transforms from concept to practice. Because reclaiming autonomy is not a single act of rebellion. It's a daily negotiation with your nervous system. Each time you choose authenticity over compliance, you're teaching your body a new equation. Freedom equals safety. 5. The healing and affirmation, the path to wholeness. Healing from control is less about revolution and more about reclamation. You don't need to burn down your old self. You need to invite it home. Begin with inner child reparenting. Picture the younger you, the one who flinched at loud voices, who earned affection through perfection. Ask them simple questions. What did you need that you never received? What would safety feel like if you didn't have to earn it? Then, as the adult, provide it. Speak to yourself in the tone you once craved. Next comes shadow work. This means meeting the parts of yourself you exiled to stay acceptable. Your anger, ambition, sensuality, boundaries, control taught you those were dangerous. Healing teaches you they're sacred. Then, boundary work. Boundaries are not walls. They're filters that honor energy. When you say no, you're not rejecting others. You're protecting the space where your true self can breathe. And finally, embodiment. Control lives in the nervous system, not just the mind. So healing must pass through the body, through breath, movement, stillness, yoga, shaking, dance, long walks, even singing. These aren't hobbies, they're rewiring rituals. Remember, this process will feel wrong at first. Your system is calibrated for control. Freedom will feel like chaos. That's normal. Philosopher Søren Kierkegaard wrote, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom." The dizziness means you're expanding beyond your old container. So let the dizziness come. Let your voice tremble as you speak the truth for the first time. Let your hands shake as you draw the boundary. Let your heart race as you step into visibility. There's a moment you know well. It lives somewhere between breath and silence. The pause before you speak your truth, the flicker of doubt before you send a message. Make a decision, or let your face show what you really feel. You are not breaking down, you are breaking through. Over time, you'll notice subtle shifts. You'll pause before apologizing and decide not to. You'll feel anger rise and realize it's information, not danger. You'll rest without earning it. You'll laugh loudly without flinching. That's the nervous system, remembering freedom. Carl Rogers once said, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." That is the essence of healing from control. Acceptance, not rebellion. Because control thrived on the belief that you were untrustworthy. Healing restores the sacred trust between you and yourself. So if you've spent years under control from parents, partners, systems, or self, know this: the cage was built out of fear, not truth. And fear can be unlearned. You were never too emotional, too dramatic, too independent. Those were simply traits that frightened, controlled people. Your sensitivity is perception. Your intensity is passion. Your independence is strength. You are not meant to be manageable. You are meant to be real. There's a moment you know well. It lives somewhere between breath and silence. The pause before you speak your truth. The flicker of doubt before you send a message. Make a decision. Or let your face show when you finally step outside the psychological bars. You'll notice something miraculous. The world doesn't collapse when you expand. You really feel the people who truly love you will adjust. The ones who only loved your submission will fall away. And that loss, though painful, is sacred space being cleared for authenticity. Healing is not about becoming fearless. It's about knowing fear no longer decides for you. It's not about shouting your power. It's about no longer whispering your truth. Final affirmation. If these words found you, it's because some part of you is already loosening the grip of control. You are remembering what freedom feels like. So take a breath, unclench your jaw, relax your shoulders. Feel your body, the one that carried you through years of self-suppression. Start to trust again. You are not behind. You are unfolding. You are not broken. You are becoming whole. The dark psychology of control taught you to survive by shrinking. Now your task is to live by expanding. Because the door to your cage was never locked. It was only taught to you as such. And now you see it clearly. The handle has always been within reach. If this resonated with you, share it. Not for algorithms, but for awareness. For every person still mistaking obedience for peace. Remember, the goal is not to be fixed. The goal is to be whole. ... The paragraphs B. Tartib ang inko. Ek. Tartib main lik kar. Do. ... In KO paragraphs. Ki shakel main liko har. Paragraph 400 to 410. Characters. Par mushtamal hoga.